There's a lot of different sources of inspiration for why I started buying records. The earliest one I can probably name is just growing up in a very musical household. My dad is a guitar player and vintage guitar collector, and he also had a recording studio he built in our guest house that he used in his spare time, so music was always a part of my life growing up. And I was born in 1990, so the music I listened to growing up was the alternative rock from that period. The first two albums my parents bought for me were Siamese Dream and Melancholy by the Smashing Pumpkins, which is still one of my favorite bands. From a young age, I had a natural interest in discographies of artists. So what I would do as sort of a creative outlet was to create fake bands and their albums and the songs that went on them, and do all the artwork and everything and the liner notes, and that was just my way to be creative at a young age. And what I did with that also was I used to take a tape recorder out to my dad's studio with a pair of drumsticks and just beat on a couch and improvise lyrics to these fake bands that I created. And so from that I became a self-taught drummer as well. But my real interest in collecting records didn't really come until early high school, around age 15. I discovered two primary artists who I believe were the greatest sources of inspiration to why I started pursuing buying records more. One of them is Nujabes, hip-hop producer from Japan, and the other one is DJ Shadow in his album Introducing. When I discovered these two albums, they kind of had different purposes. DJ Shadow's album kind of showed me that I was pretty amazed that the entire album was built from other records, and so it kind of got me interested in sampling culture as a whole, hip-hop culture and everything that came from that. And for Nujabes, it was basically I was very intrigued by how he chose his samples and made very soothing music. So kind of after I discovered those two artists, I started seriously collecting music. I started with only CDs, collected a lot of the hip-hop music from the first half of the 90s, golden age if you want to call it. So I filled my collection with primarily CDs, and then at age 17 I saved up to buy a USB turntable, and from there my CD consumption went down, and it's just been buying records ever since. One thing that's kind of gone along with my interest in records is also an interest in cataloging them. So when I started first buying music, I started using the website Discogs.com, which has grown to be one of the biggest information databases online. But it would just become sort of a process to enter all the information as well as catalog my collection. So I actually know how many records I have exactly because I'm very meticulous with organizing everything. So my total collection is just over 5,000 items. That includes CDs though, but for the most part it's records, includes 12-inch, 45s, and LPs. I would say I've been through a lot of musical phases. When I first started out, most of what I bought was jazz. I was in the jazz band in high school, so jazz was something I was always around and was interested in from early on. As it progressed, I kind of changed directions a little bit and went towards more, for lack of a broader term, black music from the 60s and 70s. So this means, all the soul artists, funk music, James Brown, hit on all the Motown artists. Recently, I've been more into northern soul and basically just soul music that's much more obscure, things that were only put on 45s, and that's sort of what I look for when I look for soul music now. But any of that is good. I've also been buying 12 inches and LPs from around 87 to 96 is sort of the window of hip-hop music that I listen to. That's kind of the sound I look for, the style of sampling, production. Sort of hard to explain, but those who know hip-hop know that era is kind of, there's a specific sound it has. So that's what I look for in hip-hop music. Anything psychedelic is good. Really into blues rock artists like Jimi Hendrix and people who do that kind of music. I really am into kind of long, drawn-out jams, if you want to call it, with a lot of improvisation. I keep an open ear to everything. I try to give everything a shot. A lot of what I buy is related to the artwork, so it might not necessarily be something I would listen to just for the music, but I like having records because it's artwork in itself, the cover, and there's just a lot of really interesting and weird things out there. So in summary, soul and funk and jazz always, hip-hop from the early 90s has always been an interest, psychedelic, and it's pretty much all over the place. I buy whatever sounds good to me, but if you want to generalize, those are the genres that I primarily buy. I buy at a lot of different places. Living in Los Angeles, it's kind of a saturated market. I know there's a lot of different people trying to do this kind of stuff, but for a lot of the first few years that I was buying, I was pretty much only doing dollar bin digging because I didn't have any money. So I would go to the dollar bin at a couple of local stores. One is called Amoeba Music, another one is called Record Surplus. I've used a website in Chicago, a store in Chicago called Dusty Groove. When I didn't have the means to go out and buy before I had a car, I would order from them. So I've always been a regular customer for them, and recent years definitely checking out garage sales more. A big part of the reason why I'm interested in buying records and going out is because there's such a luck element to it, especially at garage sales, flea markets. You really don't know what you're going to find, and you could, the one thing I look forward to is being able to find that one gem, the one record that's worth hundreds of dollars and is being sold by, someone who just wants to get rid of it, doesn't really know what they have. So that's something I always look for. I'm always on Craigslist, looking for local sales, try to go out every weekend if I can, even though it involves getting up at 7 in the morning. Basically anywhere and everywhere that I sense there's going to be good music, so always keeping my eyes open for places to buy. One interesting story that happened to me last year was I went to just a random yard sale. It was actually in the middle of the week. I think I didn't have classes that day, so I actually went out in the middle of the week to a yard sale that was randomly being put on. And I went to the sale. By the time I got there, I was there at the time that they instructed that it was going to begin. And another guy had actually come and bought everything for a flea market. It kind of pissed me off a little bit because it's kind of a low blow if you show up early and then expect to get everything. But I got there and I talked to the guy who was selling them, and he agreed to, while the guy was loading, I could go through other things and he would put stuff on the side for me to buy separately. And so he did that. He was really cool about it. And then as I was digging, he started a conversation with me and asked if I was familiar with a guy named Money Mark, who, for those who don't know, is the longtime keyboard player for the Beastie Boys. And I said, yeah, I know Money Mark. And he said, oh, I'm Money Mark's brother. And I sort of saw the resemblance once he brought it up. And so it was actually Money Mark's brother who was just selling off, I think, their dad's record collection or something. He had passed away, and he was just trying to get rid of all these records he had. So I got to talk with him a little bit about the music industry, and he was a really cool guy. He allowed me to take records out of that batch for really cheap behind the other guy's back. And he gave me a free copy of one of Money Mark's album that they had sealed there. So yeah, I'd say my most interesting story is meeting Money Mark's brother completely randomly while digging. Friends and family they're receptive to it, or they're accepting of the fact that I collect vinyl records. It's always been sort of a novelty because no one else my age that I've met, at least in college, didn't do anything like it. Everyone's in the digital age. Everyone just wants to go on iTunes and buy the latest song or pirate it. I lived in a fraternity house for 3 years in college, and for one of the years I actually had a mural of covers on my wall that I thought was just something cool to show all the artwork on the covers and things like that. So I know I got recognition from people for being someone who was obsessed with records and who had a ton of music in my room. But besides that, nothing really. I mean, my dad has probably been the person I've been able to talk to the most about music, but for the most part, it's just been kind of that's cool, you have records, but people don't really express too much interest in actually listening to them, or even looking at them when they'd come in my room. So my friends, my girlfriend, and my family, it's just been more of just something that's associated with me. And something it's not looked down upon by any means, but it's just been something I've been doing pretty much by myself since I started, because within my circle, records were such an obscure thing, and it's kind of just, people would rather spend their money on something else, but for me it was always records. Partially a reason why I started a YouTube channel. I had my YouTube channel for around 5 years. I think in 2006 I started it. A couple years ago I started realizing that I know people who are interested in records are out there, and why not use my YouTube channel to try and reach people. So for the last couple years I've been kind of making videos on and off about things I would buy, and kind of building a subscriber base very slowly. My in-person friends pretty much is just me. No one I can really go digging with, although I have taken some people on occasion, but for the most part it's just me doing my own thing. Most money I've ever spent on one record. I've actually bought two records that are around $150, which is a lot for me being a college student and not having much money in the first place. But those two records that I purchased for around $150 are Synthetic Substitution by Melvin Bliss, this 45, which has a heavily sampled drum break on it. And the other one is this album, self-titled release by Niagara. Basically those have been really elusive to me, and once I heard them I knew I wanted them, but they never came up, so when they did I had to put down the money to get it. This one especially is probably one of my favorite albums I have, besides the novelty of the cover, which is this. It's a German percussion album, which is basically just five drummers and doing two side-length tracks of just African rhythms, funk rhythms, and just all like laid on top of each other. It's really amazing music, and very hard to find in its original pressing. So picked up those two for $150. Another thing that I bought was, I guess the most money I've spent at one time was a collection of around 2,000 hip-hop records from an ex-DJ. Picked up that for around $450, and there was a lot of gems in there, so I definitely got my money's worth, and I made my money back, selling off the ones that I didn't want, in addition to keeping a lot of them. So $450 for the collection, $150 for those two records, and there's plenty that I've bought in maybe the $40 to $70 range, but in terms of the holy grails of my collection, those have got to be it. I collect vinyl because of the thrill of discovery, in addition to just being a music fanatic and just wanting always to find out more about what else is out there. That's something that I've really taken from using Discogs as a contributor and moderator for almost 6 years. It's just using that has really allowed me to learn from it and to gain the memory of the people that contributed to releases, memorizing labels and things like that. So it's been like a constant learning process for me, just being able to teach myself, learn more about music culture, learn more about the artists who have put themselves on vinyl just as their creative expression. And again, yeah, it's just a constant discovery. You never know what's out there. You never know what you're going to find. And there's no way you can ever have every record, so it's just constant hunger to find more music, find new music, and to learn about it. Plus, I really think that the visual aspect is cool, having the covers to look at, the large artwork, and even just like looking at on a shelf, I think it's just something that's rewarding, and it's something you can say like, look at my collection. I have all this. I've worked really hard, and I know about all these artists. So generally, I buy records, and I'm going to continue to buy records, just because of how rewarding it is intrinsically. It's a lifestyle, really. I mean, once you're in it and you're fully in it, you don't stop thinking about records. If you don't want to miss opportunities to go buy more records. So, I'm more of a crate digger in the traditional sense, in that I look for samples and break beats and things like that. Being a crate digger is just a lifestyle, and it's something that I know is going to stick with me for the rest of my life, and to my future home and my future family. I don't regret anything. It's one of my proudest accomplishments is building this collection, and it's something I never foresee myself giving up, and that's why I collect records.